Zettelkasten, paddling upstream. Hello everyone, my name is Persohn. Continuing on my Zettelkasten journey and hoping that you are enjoying this if you come along with me. If you like the videos, like, share, subscribe, send them to your friends, send them to your enemies. Now this topic, this has been a life changer for me and it continues to be that. Zettelkasten is Zettel is a slip or a card, cast is a box. So this is my box with cards in it. These are the larger, newer cards. This is my box with earlier ones in it, and I have to be careful that they don't fall all over the place. These have become so valuable, even though there's not a lot of them yet, that if I was to lose them, I think, oh no, what am I losing? Oh, it's almost like a cognitive decline. Say, there's no way I can remember this. Have you ever been to that place? I learned this, but I can't remember any of it at all. Well, this becomes kind of your second brain. Why have I entitled this brief discussion, Paddling Upstream? I spent a bit of time thinking about why I am doing this and why someone else would get involved with a knowledge management system. Now, you might get involved with a knowledge management system, KMS, like this one, because you have to learn something, because you have to put yourself in a place to acquire new information. Now, I'm doing that currently. I've got a little 2 or 3 side topics that I'm just developing, and I'm using the Zettelkasten approach for that. So maybe you're just cherry picking something that you just need to know. So perhaps it's document formatting, or learning another language, or some computer coding, or I don't know, it doesn't really, baking bread, it doesn't matter, but you realize you need this kind of thing to do that. Now, one of the things that happens once you get the Zettelkasten approach correct is that it starts to wake up areas of your mind that you never knew were there. You begin to make connections that may have never existed before, even in your sleep. You say, oh, I just made a connection to that. Oh, that's useful. Oh, I can take that. I can use that. It's interesting how this works. That's why we call it a second brain approach. The paddling upstream thing, though, is worth talking about. Most of the time we engage these things, we bring these things into our lives, either something to help us to memorize, or something to help us to remember, or something to help us to learn better, because we want to improve ourselves. And improving yourself requires paddling upstream. It requires turning the boat around and working against the tide, because really the tide, or the current, is the easy place to be. It's just easy to lie there and let the boat take you wherever it wants to go. It's easy to just sit there on the canoe and just steer a bit away from the shore and just let it take you wherever. But you don't know where that is. That could be a waterfall, rapids, or whatever. And, of course, the good stuff may be the other way around. And in terms of self-improvement, in terms of making a difference to yourself and where you are, the good stuff is definitely the other way. In order to master anything in life, you will have to reject almost everything. You'll have to reject many of your natural urges. Your natural urge to rest, your natural urge to get away, your natural urge to hide from responsibility. You'll have to reject that, and you'll have to steer up against it. Now, the reason for a knowledge management system like Zettelkasten, and why I believe Zettelkasten, at least so far in my life, is the best thing I've ever come across, it has helped me to navigate that journey upstream. It's helped me to focus on those things that matter and not to get bogged down with things on the side. And it's really fascinating how that works. So we're talking about this from both a philosophical or theoretical approach, but also a practical one. Theoretically, philosophically, if you want to use that word, the knowledge management tools that we use help us to turn the ship around, help us to work against the tide. Now, there is somebody that I'm in competition with. There is somebody that I desperately have to be better than. And it took me some time to face that and to face my competition and to realize that I must be better than this one in every possible way. And that's the one I look at in the mirror. Okay, that's me. I'm in competition with myself. The Zettelkasten approach is a tool that I use to do that. I realize that I have to be a better me than I ever have been. Now I'm in my 60s. There are things I can't lift like I used to be able to lift. I'm not sure I can run as well as I used to be able to run. You know, obviously you're aging, but there are things that are working as well as ever, and those things need to be improved. So I have to compete against me. I've got to measure against me. I think when I've looked at this whole why do people get involved in knowledge management systems and memory management systems and self-improvement systems? It's really the real fundamental basis of that is your need to improve who you are. And that person you can happily compete against is yourself. Now, the other advantage of knowing that you have to compete against yourself is it stops things like rage and envy, or at least puts them on the edge. Often, if you go to compete to be better than the person next door, you end up in covetousness and envy. It doesn't get you anywhere at all. And this Zettelkasten approach, then, is really useful. So what I'm going to do here is just talk for a moment from a practical point of view about the importance of review and backlinking. So I intentionally began this process. When I looked at how people do Zettelkasten, I thought the one thing I'm not going to do, I'm going to do it later, is the review process. I'm just going to get to take notes, because I've seen people get bogged down with this, where they say, okay, I need fleeting notes, I need literature notes, I need reference notes, I need so on. Kind of like that death by categories thing. No, what I'm going to do is the moment I find something that matters to me, something that pops off the page, if you will, I'm going to give it an ID. Now, that's the most critical thing with a Zettelkasten card. Really, really critical. I'm going to give it an ID that is unique, a UID. We call that in data. And I'm going to record my thoughts, and then I'm going to come back and review later. So I'm now doing reviews for cards that are months old, and that's really interesting. Would I recommend it? I think not. However, I've gone into that knowing my own personal limitations, knowing that I'll hop into a thing too diligently, and then it'll start to fail for me, and I'll think, So this hasn't been that way. This has been quite successful. And so what I'm doing now is I'm grabbing cards, stacks of them, and I'm backlinking them, and I'm categorizing them. In the future, what I will do is probably get to where I have maybe a Sunday evening or a Saturday night or something period where I'll do my reviews, and then maybe tighten it. Nicholas Luhmann said that he reviewed his cards every day. Maybe that's a thing that should be done if you record a number of cards. So the point that what I've discovered, which is interesting here, and this is part of this, is that you learn how your own mind works, right? Is I'll create the card, and again, I cannot stress strongly enough, if you're new to this, to use a system similar to what I'm doing here. That is 1001A. So that's the 1st of October, first card, 1st of October A. You notice that how I formed that. Now, sorry about my handwriting. The reason that I've done it like this is to say that this helps me. This is a date format, because B will come after it, C, and so on. I can find any card I've generated any time and drop it in. When I'm at work sometimes, I don't have my cards with me, but I'll put the Zettels in my diary and then convert them to cards. Well, I know exactly where they go. If it's been a couple of days, I say, I know where that is. Why is that important? Well, because as you grow and as you learn, you do things better. I can look at this card and say, my data here is much better than it was earlier because I know what needs to be there. Okay? So now I'm grabbing a bunch of unlinked cards. Now, if I never link a card, if I just leave it and never link it, it becomes an orphan, and it's just a frustrating, nasty little piece of paper that I'm not dealing with. So it is important to link it. It's also important, and I've said this before, but I can't stress it enough, to link the cards in two ways. I should be able to grab any of my cards once this process is done, any card that is linked, and I should be able to just pull it out of the box, okay? And it should take me back to, this one isn't done yet, I should be able to pull it out of the box. It should take me back to my topics, if there are any, and on the back to a parent card or to other cards that it's linked to. So I haven't done that with this particular one yet. And then it starts to become a much more beautiful thing. Now, if you have, and think about this process now in reverse. Imagine if I have my bridging cards, which are cards wherein every card that's on a particular node is noted in the bridging card. When I have my bridging card, I can then find all my other cards. What happens, however, if I have a card that's out there that only references that doesn't reference the bridging card on the card itself? Am I making myself clear? Let's try this again. I've got my bridging card, and let's say that it's about I don't know, diesel injector pump repair. I'm not going there, okay? It's not my thing, but it's marvelous. I completely admire anybody who can do it. But let's say that's my new thing. And I've got my bridging card with all those notes. Well, that's fine. Each bridging card references a card that's out there somewhere. Now, that card that's out there somewhere, I need to be able to pick it up, and it needs to note the bridging card as well, so I can go back. I can find it and go back on that card. The other advantage of that is that I can link that card then to others on different topics, maybe petrol fuel injection, or maybe jet engine fuel injection. I don't know, really pulling this out of the air. So the purpose here is to understand that backlinking thing. Every card should have two references on it, its own and its bridge. The bridging card should have its own reference, which is that date, and the card itself. And that's how these things begin to work. As these things begin to take place and you do better, you begin to say, hey, this particular card that is bridged also means something to this particular topic. And that's how the nodes begin to develop. And that's when the richness starts to take place. And I'm just beginning to notice that. Now, why do we do these things? We do these things to become a better person than we are. We're in competition with ourselves. In this day when life is getting tougher, let me tell you, it's coming towards the end of 2020. Let me say, ladies and gentlemen, the end of 2022, where I was living in the past. Let me say, ladies and gentlemen, things are not getting any easier. They're getting harder. You're going to need to be a better you than you are in order to rise above the circumstances coming your way. A good knowledge management process really works. Today we've just reminded ourselves of the importance to paddle upstream. You do this because the stream is not where you want to go. Hey, everybody around you, well, the majority of them, are not paddling upstream. They're in the canoes going down where the tide is taking them, where the river's taking them. Who knows where that is? When you paddle upstream, you're going to pass people going the other way. You're going to look at them saying, they have a much easier life than me. Wouldn't it be just easy just to sit there drinking beer on the canoe and just going wherever the river takes me? But that's not necessarily a good place. No. When you paddle upstream, you will notice that there are people going the other way. Now, the other thing is, some of those people won't want to be your friends. One of the most intimidating things that can happen, or the most effective ways you can intimidate a lazy person, is to get involved with work in their presence. They can't handle that. So you may have to end some relationships or tweak some relationships in order to accomplish those things that you want. Hey, I would like to just encourage you to think about this process. We have just taken a few moments to talk about Zettelkasten, paddling upstream, backlinking cards. We'll do a little more technical stuff going forward, but I just thought I'd take this moment to give you this message and give you some great things to look forward to. God bless you. Let's come back later and talk some more.